This event is brought to you by World Pro Racing, the Malta Motorsport Federation, Game Breaker Malta, GMR Entertainment, WJ England and Son, Melita, Media Looks, Restream.io, Gaming Malta, VisitMalta.com, and TVM Sport.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
It's just so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of amazing sim racing action took place and created what was a formula, a background for what the Maltese community can produce when it comes to their action. Over those 6 weeks, Group 3 vehicles battled, fought, toiled time and time again to get one winner. But what was very, 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 very crucial here about all of the racing action that went on was that it brought a sense of competition together. And from those said competitions, we now have challenges. And it's those challenges here today that find ourselves exactly where we are situated. This is a little trip over to England. We're going to Kent. We're going to Brands Hatch because it is your Nissan Challenge here this evening, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you may be watching around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jake Sperry, joined here in the commentary box alongside with Nicholas Hillerbrand and, of course, Justin and Nathan Mifsud on the cameras for this one here today. So, what's going to be very crucial about racing around Brands Hatch in these GT3s, these Group 3 category vehicles on Gran Turismo Sport, is going to be who can adjust to a vehicle that was not run over the past 6 weeks. Nicholas, we didn't see much Nissan love, but the GTR, a lineage that has been so many times heralded time and time again, legendary for many a reason.
Hello everyone. Yes, the Nissan GTR definitely something that doesn't need an introduction. And in this GT3 variant, of course, in the latest motorsport times, the most popular variant, of course, around 600 horsepower with this wonderful V6 engine, also known as Godzilla by its many fans, and around Brands Hatch. So a very fast car in a straight line around a very fast track with very fast corners. So I think this should be a very interesting race to see.
Absolutely. We're about 6 minutes away from practice starting up. 15 minutes of practice, 15 minutes of qualifying, and then we will have ourselves a 20-lap race around Brands Hatch. Now, to talk a little bit about this Nissan legacy, of course, this GT3 vehicle comes out of the Skyline name, which made so many famous production cars, especially the R32, which is so heavily revered through many different facets and loved even more for those who are a fan of animation and cars going sideways. But more importantly than that, the transition over to a GT3 vehicle away from the Skyline name and effectively a spiritual successor. You've got a vehicle which is all about power. It's all about putting it down. It's a mid-rear vehicle as well, so it's a little bit more tough to try and drive. But you look at a track which doesn't have many long straights to go and get something working, full of fast, medium-speed corners. This is going to be a real challenge for the drivers today, Nicholas.
And not just for the drivers, also for the tires, because of course the Nissan is, a high-speed expert, but of course, it's also one of the heavier GT3 cars, one of the bigger GT3 cars, of course, and it's not quite as agile as maybe, an Audi or something like that with, a mid-engine. Of course, it's also front-engined and a turbo car, so it will definitely be a challenge to keep the car around here for the entirety of this 20-lap race. So yeah, let's see who can keep up his consistency the best, and let's see who can make it to the front at the end.
Absolutely. You are watching here on, of course, World Pro Racing's YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Twitch as well. You are watching, of course, on the Esports Television Network, and that's going to be something really interesting to keep in mind. We've also got likes of Motorsport TV and, of course, TVM Sport that we are along with as well. And if you haven't already, go over to social media, go like everything that's going on, and any which way you can, go and help support sim racing, be it no matter what platform you look at, what game you are interested in. This is sim racing, and it is the hottest thing coming up over the next few runs and the next few months, and it's been growing and growing so much. But this is the point where we say that these challenges, they are designed to be pretty much fun at this stage, Nicholas. And it's worth talking about the fact that these races are for fun, because this is all part of that gearing up process. Who can be the most adaptable? Who can be the most entertaining? Who can be the quickest? Who can get themselves to the top time and time again? With 2021 and national championships on the horizon, any sort of opportunity to get your leg through the door and effectively force your way in, this is a big chance for people.
It definitely is. I think these casual races are not just, a proving ground to show yourself for the first time in this community, but of course, as you said, the adaptability is going to be tested here, and it's not always a good situation where you can actually, in a competitive but still, casual environment, where you can actually try to prove yourself, and it's going to be that difficult thing for people to, actually put down this performance, because of course this is just casual and fun, but who steps in a race car and doesn't want to be first at the end of the race?
Exactly, and there are 3 of these challenges that will be coming up over the next 3 weeks or so. So we've got today, of course, which is the Nissan Challenge. We look over to next week, where the Lamborghini Challenge is going to be in full view. And then we move on top of that, of course, to the Formula event. That'll be coming along as well. Casual Wednesdays, we shall call it, and it will be absolutely magnificent. Go and see and go and have a really good fun time. But of course, when it comes to now trying to look over towards practice, of course, there's been no form set, there's been no race on top of this, so effectively this is the first time that all of these drivers will meet, come together and understand, okay, who's got what sort of pace, who's going to be the form setter, who's going to be the one to watch, and maybe who's saving a little bit coming towards qualifying and going to try and throw a cat amongst the pigeons and surprise a couple of people.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a lot of questions. Of course, we are used to Spa by now, so a 7-kilometer track. This, in contrast, of course, only 3.9 kilometers. So obviously, Brands Hatch is one of these shorter circuits. The lap record in an A1 GP car around here is just 1 minute 12 seconds, and it's, well, around 1 minute 25, 1 minute 30, depending on how you get along with the track, with one of these Group 3 cars, maybe even down to 120 in Gran Turismo Sport. So, yeah, the issue is, a lot of people that have been driving in the Spa races, I think they're going to find, like on Spa, you have these short straights, at least, between, Pouon and Piff Puff, and of course, before Blanchimont and also the Camel Straight. So you have long periods of time where you can rest. But at Brands Hatch, that's just not the case. You're just constantly turning. You're just constantly wrestling the car to stay on top with the grip. So it should be very interesting today. And here we see Windy, of course, more well known in his VW Beetle. And now he's rocking this yellow Penzol Nissan.
Exactly, up, down, all around, so many people wanting to get in, and this is practice. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going along 15 minutes of form setting guide up and down in the Kent countryside in the United Kingdom. That is the Druids hairpin Windy is going through right now and descending down the hill into the Graham Hill bend. Such a tough corner, you have to turn and brake at the same time. Little wiggle on the exit, and that is exactly what we see. This is going to be very, very interesting. This GT3 2013 spec GT3 from Malta Motorsport, so that's just worth keeping in mind as they will try and barrel it down Hawthorne Hill and over towards the next right-hand corners out on track. So every single time drivers will be looking for an overtake. This is going to be a very tough place to get it right, mainly because of how wide this track is. You can see it right now. You can barely fit too wide through the majority of this section. They can see just pushing wide up Dingledale and into the Sheen curve. It's so very, very easy to get it wrong, and there we can see just why this track is so difficult to get correct.
Yeah, you never really have bigger braking zones here, except for, of course, you know, Druid's hairpin. But yeah, we also have Gelino here now, also known from his races in the Spa races now. And yeah, also very interesting livery here. And as you said, it's the Schultz Motorsport car from quite a few years ago. So it is the fan favorite, the big Godzilla with the huge rear wing on the rear end, as we can see. Oh, Gelino. Okay, sorry, I'm just being notified that I've been saying his name wrong here. Gelino, there we are. And yeah, he's looking at a nice second place right now, but 1.2 seconds behind Windy. So Windy's obviously, you know, planning to continue with the form that he showed in his Beetle before.
Exactly, and there you can see the tail kick out going through their Stirling's Bend and heading up towards Clearways, the final section, the Jim Clark curve, and how to get onto another lap around this place. And this has been a brilliant place to see so many racing memories time and time again going on board. And this is what drivers see, this blind crest down the hill over at turn number 1, have to try and fight for grip all the way, but then you head towards turn number 2, hitting the brakes hard and slowing it right down to about 85 k's before getting on the power, and the back starting to step out slightly through every section. Now just look at the tyres right now here and where all the issues are that we are seeing here. In the middle left of your screen, you can see it is the left-hand side tyres which are screaming out in agony. The reason why, firstly, A, this is a clockwise circuit, and B, it's the fact that you've got this section coming up where you have 3 right-hand bends back to back to back, all of which put massive emphasis on the tyres.
Yes, and it's quite tricky, of course, to keep this tyre wear in management all the time, of course, because you can see these are quite high-speed corners. You can see how he's struggling there. Now trying to turn into Sheen curve, just hitting that apex perfectly over the little curb on the inside. Now going into Stirling's, and we saw that Windy was already quite nervous on the exit there earlier. When you get on that curb on the outside, it's quite bumpy, and we've seen a lot of GT3 drivers in real life already put it in the wall there.
Absolutely, and there is a lap around this Brands Hatch circuit. It is 1 minute 26, so not necessarily quick. That was about 2.5 seconds off of the fastest time possible. This is Rike in the base livery, some would say. 1, 2, 3 on the side, looking to try and find as much pace as possible. So every time these drivers are looking to search, they're hoping that they are going to be in the best place possible. That 9 times tyre wear acceleration still ever present for this event, so that's going to be worth keeping in mind. And the fuel levels should be incredibly similar to what we see. But I would say that fuel, I think, is going to be less of a factor here today than it was, say, at Spa-Francorchamps for the past 6 weeks. mainly because here, Nicholas, you look at this circuit, it is very much a track where you do have the ability to lift and coast a little bit more and still keep up that top speed. You're able to save that fuel a little bit better than other places.
Yeah, most definitely. And also a very big difference between this and Spa-Francorchamps, of course, is first of all, you have far less elevation. At Spa, you just fly up the hill and fly down the hill. And meanwhile, you have these hard braking and acceleration zones, and those are the zones where you burn the most fuel. Meanwhile, here, you always stay in third or fourth gear or even further up. So you don't have as much to accelerate as. And of course, as you said, with these straights here, and of course with all the dirty air in the middle sector, you can't just overtake all the time. So lifting and coasting here, and just trying to stay as close behind as possible, it works out better in most situations. So it'll be quite a lot of strategy coming into play here as well, as we're here with Relax Racing. Also a name that some people should know, because this is our beloved Mazda pilot from last week from the grand final, and now in a similar colored yellow Nissan.
Absolutely, Japanese engineering on display here with the Nissan, and heading through onto the start-finish straight, which is, of course, banked to the inside. Of course, there is an Indy layout, which is the short layout, which you see normally at the start of a British Touring Car Championship as Relax Racing goes for a huge wiggle. Now you got that full Grand Prix layout, which is so quick and was so iconic in the mid-80s, back when Ayrton Senna was driving around in a Lotus. There's so many memories that go around this place. And of course, talking as well about Gran Turismo's legacy, I remember back in the day, there was the Ayrton Senna pack that came out, or the downloadable content that was there, and that ability to go out and race as Ayrton Senna, to go out and maybe have this opportunity to relive some of the amazing moments that he had. That was something that could be recreated here at this Brands Hatch circuit. It's a track which I think for many comes along as a real racing circuit. You know that if you race around here, you're going to be door to door more often than not.
Definitely, and it's just this, well, how can you say it best? This is still one of the true racing circuits, much like Spa. These tracks were properly built into the environment instead of the environment around them. The best example, of course, Paddock Hill Bend. You just don't have corners like that in modern motorsport anymore, simply because, it's unique. It's just completely, a thing that you can't create artificially. The way it just drops off to the outside, the off-camber, this is just such a challenge to get right every single time. And oh, there we are! A bit of a nervous moment there. Carl just barely keeps it out of the wall. A lot of awareness going on from him.
Looks like he's been in the wall a little bit, though, with the front left looking not too brilliant, heading over towards the start-finish, but ultimately able to get a good run going at this stage and trying to make that push, as we just see there, Ayrton Senna helmet there coming along. Socrates, we haven't seen I would say, a doctor, so to speak, in this one. So Socrates 4x4 looking a little bit more 4x4 at that stage than would be needed in that Nissan, and really struggling to get back on the power early. Of course, when you do get off of the circuit and you start losing that rhythm and losing that momentum, this is by no means a Herman Tilke design track. It is grass and gravel. It is old school if you get it wrong around this place, and because it is old school, it means that there is no traction for zero mistakes.
I probably would have wished that this Nissan GTR would have the same all-wheel drive that, the street version has, but of course, since this is based on a GT3 car, it's all rear-wheel drive, all around 600 horsepower, depending on how the BOP is, and certainly not something that you would want to take into a non-tarmac environment.
Absolutely not. And what will also be key today is how the tyre strategies are going to be looking at. Many people have thought that soft tyres worked very, very well in terms of strategy, but we've seen a few drivers here and there look to trial out that medium compound tyre, hoping that that might be an opportunity to look at around this place, mainly because it's so aggressive on one side of a tyre compared to the others. It's almost like you hope you have that option where, say, in an Indy car, you can take, or a NASCAR, you can take right side tyres only. It's not going to be the case here today. They have to take 4 fresh sets of boots to put on the vehicle and go out and attack once again. Once they are done with the racing action, they can see Jalinu getting it wrong through the Jim Clark curb and going back to the pits after his escapade out on circuit. But what's very, very clear is that there is no guarantees on what is going to work. We know that the soft tyres are the quickest, but at a track which is a lot more intensive on the tyres, how will that, Nicholas, then look to try and play in a strategy game, and will the mediums be a better race tyre?
I think the mediums have a solid shot here, because the softs, of course, the main difference in tire compounds, as is in the name, the softs have a lot softer rubber. They give you more traction, they give you more grip under heavy loads. But that also means they deform more under high speeds. The high deformation, of course, makes more heat, and when the tires just get too hot, they just completely lose all grip. And I think this would be one of the factors where medium tires can be quite helpful, because they don't have that much, grip and time loss compared to, hard tires, for example. But at the same time, they also don't deform as much. So maybe the reduced wear and, the smaller potential for overheating, maybe people can make this work here.
Absolutely. We're about 5 minutes away, ladies and gentlemen, from the start of qualifying. They'll have 15 minutes, the opportunity to put all their laps in on the board and see who is going to be the fastest around Brands Hatch here today. That's Del Sol at the moment we're having a good look at for the moment. Currently third position as the timing graphic says right now, but everything can change. We haven't seen anyone go close to that 1:22.4 lap time over practice, which Windy has control of at this stage in time. But there are so many reasons why you get some great racing out of these Group 3 category cars when it comes to Gran Turismo Sport. A very nice balance of vehicles, and actually something that hasn't really been talked about is just how brilliant the drip feed of vehicles has been in time and time again, race after race, week after week, month after month. How every single time there is always a new car on the horizon that comes in, and from a new car, so to speak, from the early stages of the game coming out, we're now looking at Gran Turismo 7 on the horizon as well, which is, some would say, a look back into the past, a very Gran Turismo 4 PlayStation 2-esque feel, a lot of the critics are saying.
Well, I mean, someone who had Gran Turismo 4 for PlayStation 2 in his childhood and of course loves that game, that sounds pretty much like, well, perfect bit of nostalgia for me. So if it does actually happen to be like that, yeah, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it.
Absolutely not, but they have blocked Trial Mountain, so you can't take the old line that you could around there. And we always talk about the real and the virtual in terms of Gran Turismo Sport. It blends fantasy and reality in some brilliant fashions, and we see it so many times before, and that's something worth keeping in mind. That Formula Challenge, that Formula car is effectively a virtual car. It's based on a lot of properties that Formula 1 has, a lot of properties that IndyCar has, but effectively it's its own design, and it is very, very quick when we get to it. From the Nissans that we got right now to the Lamborghinis, it's that switch to the third challenge, which is going to be the most difficult, I think a lot will find, going from closed wheel cockpit racing to open wheel racing.
It will definitely be a switch up because, well, we have talked about this before, you have dirty air in these cars, of course, and you want to have all the downforce that you can have. But the dirty air in GT3 cars, if you start comparing it to the dirty air in most open wheel cars, your jaw is going to drop how much grip you lose in an open wheel car, because, you just have so much more downforce through the front and rear wing and the diffuser. And then you're basically just going to say, these GT3 drivers, when they talk about dirty air, they don't know what they're talking about. I'm just trying to drive through a fast corner behind someone else, and I'm just constantly going straight.
Absolutely, I think a lot of people will be looking casual racers going, well, why are there going to be so many different types of car, types of vehicle, types of everything that I think people will be looking at? And I think the simple answer is you've got to try and find talent through a broad spectrum of vehicles. You're never going to find the best looking at the same one place every single time. People will conglomerate over towards a certain situation, but I think that when you do find talent, you have to look pretty much everywhere for all of that talent to be found. But ladies and gentlemen, we're just a few moments away from qualifying action, and it's going to be very, very entertaining to see who is going to be up there at the very top, who is going to be up there challenging with the very best and looking to try and say, well, one challenge is in my back pocket, and effectively you could say, Nicholas, we're playing with pink slips today.
Yeah, definitely. Windy seemed to be quite fast, 1.2 seconds ahead of everyone else, but right behind that, it was only 14 thousandths between P2 and P3. And even then, it didn't let off, just barely a couple tenths, and it just went down that way the entire order. And I think that's going to be quite a spectacle to see, if Windy can get this lap together, and if others can maybe, just try find a bit of a second wind in qualifying, or if they maybe were just practicing with race fuel, as we have Windy here on camera now. And right behind him is Shelinu, who was in second place in practice, and I think he's going to want to stay with Windy. Of course, he's going to have a bit of dirty air around this track, but of course, we've seen before, you want that slipstream, and this is definitely one of these tracks where slipstream can do quite a lot for you.
Absolutely, and you have to be pretty much primed. There's not going to be many places where you can get overtakes done today, but it is going to rely on that slipstream, that toe, to get yourself close enough to make that a reality. Zelinu having a little slight warm-up of the tyres there with a little bit of a moment, but let's go on board with Windy and have a flying lap around this wonderful, wonderful circuit, heading across the start-finish line and towards Paddock Hill Bend. Of course, a very, very tough corner, one of the most famous British corners in all of racing, and it is a true test, just pushing it ever so slightly wide there over onto the rumble strip before uphill braking, which means you can go slightly later into the Druids corner before you descend back down the hill. Heading now towards turn 3, of course, the Graham Hill Bend, legendary Graham Hill, 6 times a Monaco winner. He's got the Triple Crown, or had the Triple Crown, under his belt, and now into Surtees corner. Turn number 4, left-hander. First sector comes up with 29.7, and now up the rise, because this is where the Grand Prix circuit really tests those left-hand side tyres.
Yes, now coming down to Hawthorns, hard on the braking, down to 4th gear, and constantly back to the throttle, just barely wrestling with the 180 kilometers an hour mark. Now Westfield coming on the inside, cutting over the inside curb, on the outside curb there. Now Dingledell, just very easy to flub here, and Sheen curb, and now through Sterling's 3rd gear, over that inside curb as much as possible while not losing momentum on the outside curb. There we go, down to the last corner, 200 kilometers an hour, under that bridge, not over that bridge, luckily, and yeah, 3rd gear through the last corner, clean run, and let's see what the lap time will say.
Well, it was full fuel. It's a 22.7 in terms of the lap time. You can see the fuel gauge started from full. Zelini on a 24.6 then is closest in at 3rd. You got likes of Robert, 24.6. Mark putting in a 23.9 though. That's good enough to go to 3rd place. Del Sol at the moment currently classified in 2nd position in qualifying. Rike on a 24.2 and a 26.8 for Mr. Collin, a little ways off the pace. Socrates there, a bit off the pace, some would say. A 36 flat, not ideal. Relax with a 33.7, effectively warming up the laps. Not every driver's going to get these laps in immediately, but the good news that they have is that they can take maybe 2, maybe even 3 attempts at a lap, try and get things together, because the lap is what we would say, I would say standard. A minute and a half is normally what you'd see for a lap of vehicle around a circuit like this. This is going to be a case of, well, you have probably about 7, 8 laps that you've got available to you to go out there and set some brilliant times with stops.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, people, they have to think about the strategy in qualifying as well. Strategy is not only a race thing, but also for qualifying, obviously. You need to have that perfect gap You know, just that perfect bit of clean air if you don't want to go for a lap immediately or don't want to go for that toe. And on a track like Brands Hatch, it's not the longest lap. It's quite difficult to find that gap just perfectly, as we see Mr. Collin there from a little bit of an excursion from the left side of the track, making space now for Mark coming through, and Mark still has left side indicators on, but he pulls over to the right into the pit lane.
Exactly, he's going to come down in, get that automated stop going on, and part of the Gran Turismo Sport infrastructure. It's all about getting back onto track again. Socrates goes faster onto a 30.2, does not gain position. Relax to a 26.8, goes into 8th place. Kyle Zarb just ahead there in 7th position now with a 26.5. So that's what Relax will have to do. We'll have 0.3 of a second go and work with. Windy still out there and circulating, trying to find that improvement, and there is that very, very beautiful Nissan there of Relax Racing's there. Got the fantastic black scoop on the front. That's not going to be useful. Bumping into the back of Socrates, who was braking a little bit earlier compared to where Relax was in terms of the marker for turn number 4, and that's going to be a tall order to look at here in terms of racing. If we do get to the lap traffic scenario through 20 laps, then braking markers around a track where you maybe 3-4 seconds a lap slower could easily pick up half a second, if not 2/3 of a second, through one corner alone.
Yeah, and that is what I meant with finding this perfect gap. Relax, you know, he seems to be a lot more confident around this track. And, oh, now just barely braking on the grass, so making his way over into the gravel. And Socrates basically follows him. Everyone follows him, Jesus Christ. That's a lot of impatience from the guys, and of course Relax is not going to be happy with this. You know, he wants to still get his proper lap in. His lap was only a warm-up lap to try and get the gap, and immediately he was trapped behind Socrates. Mr. Collin now with a 126 moves up a little bit from his former lap, I think. He had a 128 before. And yeah, you know, the improvements are coming down all around the town, but Relax has to head to pits first to get new tires, because these will definitely be shredded.
Absolutely, and that fresh tyres will just take a little bit of time out of the session. There's 8 minutes to go here in qualifying. We're almost at the halfway stage. Bye, Robert, into the Armco there on the right-hand side of circuit. That would not be what was needed for him, but will ultimately now have a very, very slow run back to pits. That's the furthest point possible away from the pits, as Windy will come in, get a new fresh set of soft compound tyres, and go out and get things going again. There you can see getting himself out and going. And now this is something very interesting from Windy in terms of the strategy of qualifying. Has decided over the course of this one here, Nicholas, just not to take any fuel on board when it comes to the stops. Just go out there full tank, use the tyres up, and then second stint, keep going with the tyres, because no fuel was taken when it came to that stop.
Yeah, it's of course usually the practice, you know, to start the lap as light as possible, but in light of the situation here, only 7 minutes remaining, you know, you want to spend the least time as possible actually, you know, just staying in the pit lane here. You know, you just want to get the new rubbers, you want to head straight back out. As opposed to Spa, you can actually do more than one hot lap efficiently here. So yeah, the strategy has certainly changed up quite a bit when you already look at qualifying here. So I'm quite excited to see how it will have changed up when we look at the race later.
Absolutely, and it was worth keeping an eye on those times that were up on the right-hand side of the screen, because what you saw there was just how much the tyres fell away from lap 1 to lap 2 to lap 3, going out on a stint. From lap 1 to lap 2 was about 0.3 of a second for Windy. From lap 2 to 3, it was a further half a second. So you can see how exponentially harder things get, and you can see on the mini-map that we've got on the top right hand of your screen, that is where all the drivers find themselves, and there is a 4-car train heading its way down into the Hawthorns Bend at the moment, so that's going to be worth keeping in mind. Rike currently in 4th position. Now, Zelinu doing something interesting there, was originally on mediums for that opening run of stops, that opening run of laps, but now has gone on to the soft compound tyre, so clearly looking for something maybe a little bit better right now. Mr. Collin looking for something. Mark there in the background went for a little bit of a slide out out through that sheen curve, and that's a corner which many people, Nick, they look at it and go, oh, it's just an easy right-hander. It's the third right-hander in a row. You come up the hill, you have to hit the brakes, but so many people just careen straight on because they forget it's an off-camber corner.
Yeah, it's not just off camber, of course. When you take that curb on the inside a bit too much, there's a nasty bump there, which just sends your car flying straight. If you brake a little bit too far on the left, welcome to the grass, you're going straight. If you brake too late, welcome, you're going straight. And if you don't brake at all, if you're feeling very confident, yeah, also welcome to the gravel, you're going straight.
Well, that's always going to be an issue. Robert there again pushing on those tyres, heading through towards the big long back stretch, and of course that famous Nations League incident that happened, of course, not necessarily in Gran Turismo, but in the real world when there were football teams and they all sort of joined together and had their own race. There was a huge red flag accident, which of course my memory serves correctly, and there you can see the slowdown penalties coming into play in terms of the racing, and there is the ghosting effect that comes in, trying to serve the penalty and get back to racing action. Robert has served all of that penalty and gone on through. Now that's for running out wide, cutting track, using too much of it. Rike though, a 23.9 puts Rike up into third position, so we're starting to see those times come in. Only 4.5 minutes and now 4 minutes 20 left to go.
Yes, and it's already a bit closer than it was in practice, because when we still see it here, 1:22.7, but Rike with a 23.9 is already, as close as we had second place be to Windy in practice. So this could be quite interesting. Relax though, finally getting a lap in, finally having a bit of clean air, moves him up to fifth place, 24.6. But I think he is probably going to want to find a bit more time there still.
Absolutely, but it gets tougher and tougher with these tyres to go and find a little bit more. And there you can see a huge slide going up, almost like Tony Hawk, onto the side of the curb there at Graham Hill Bend. Windy, though, sets a 22.3 and moves the benchmark even further. Now, here's something else that Relax will be happy with. A single thousandth of a second clear of Zelinu in 6th position. Overall, that's going to be something worth keeping in mind. But speaking of the devil, Zelinu up now into 3rd position right now on a 23.2. So puts the gap down to 9/10 of a second. And if that time looks correct between 3rd and 2nd, they could be dead even.
Yes, and that is quite insane to see here. Everyone's just finding their wind now, it seems. Everyone's finding their rhythm now. And yeah, this is the power of, actually starting to get into the groove, starting to have some free air. And we see Windy again as Mr. Collin improves on a 25.6, and Relax improves once again here. I told you that he wasn't done yet, 24.1. So, yeah, not to space up really, but it's still this little bit improvement here. And Windy, I think, is also still on a lap, very clean there through Sterling's. Now coming underneath the bridge and to Clark Curve for the last corner. And no, he's just straight heading into the pit lane. So maybe one more attack from him coming after changing to new rubbers.
Well, that will have to be the case. They are allowed to finish the lap that they start. So immediately off and away again with 2 minutes 5 remaining. That's enough time to get around and set a flying lap with about 30 seconds to go. Zelinu's going to do the same. It's going to be a one-lap shootout here to see if anybody can improve then on their time. So let's keep that in mind as they go on through. Windy, Del Sol, Zelinu, Rike, Mark, your top 5. Following that, Relax, Robert and Mr. Collin make the top 8 on the timing stands. Rike, a 1:23.789, remains in 4th place, but did improve on the time. So that's going to be key then in terms of trying to find a little bit more. Maybe high as 4th is only the way that Rike can go, but Nicholas, minute and a half remaining. It's all about gearing up and making sure there are 0 mistakes on the money lap.
And there's another one. That's Robert with a 23.6 and Relax with a 24.0. And Robert actually so fast that he completely forgot to brake for Paddock Hill Bend. Now on the outside there. I think he's done for this qualifying,
yeah.
But I think he's already done enough with a solid 4th place. And now on board with Rike, he was just been moved down a little bit. At the same time, Windy, of course, here, heading through the end of his out lap and going for another lap, maybe even trying to peak down to the 121s, because his fuel will definitely be making him a lot lighter now.
Absolutely. Relax Racing and Mr. Collin will not improve on time. So Windy here trying to make progress happen. Yellow flags being waved at Paddock Hill Bend will be just a little bit nerve-wracking, and there you can see that's why. It's probably Robert there, and another vehicle across the circuit as well would not have made life very, very easy at that section for Windy. Would have been a bit of a distraction down the hill. Looking at turn 3 now and trying to use all of the track possible. And you can see up there onto those curbs, and those are the times on the right-hand side. You can see how they have been worked, and this is the big lap that has to be worked out. Already up by nearly 0.2 of a second in the opening time alone. So that first sector's going to be keen. You can see there the big red box saying final lap. So this is your chance on the lowest fuel possible. And again, next sector stays the same, but there was only one corner between that sector, and they'll keep on moving forward. That timer has expired, so all drivers coming over towards the line. These are their final attempts. Just catching one driver in front as well will not be useful for Windy. And of course, that 10 car in 10th place, not ideal. Started to lose time though, down to just 1/10 of a second there. And Socrates is going to have to get out of the way, just about does so. Windy now through the final corner of the Jim Clark curve and trying to make a push to the line. This could be a 0.2 that we see going over the line, and nobody's going to see much to try and argue against. The 22.219 has pole position under lock and under key as well. Shalinu trying to make a push to try and find some improvements here. Is a full second off the pace right now and does not find what is needed over the line, nor does Kyle Zarb in 9th position coming over. So some brilliant, interesting times coming in, but Windy there, Nicholas, top of the timing stand.
Most definitely. There was another solid performance of him, very reminiscent of his performance in the Beetle. And yeah, just getting a bit unlucky there. I think in the middle sector he threw away a little bit. If he had continued with that pace from the first sector, which was very impressive, 0.2 up in that short distance, that's quite something to actually still get out. So very impressive to do. And yeah, I think just at the end there and at the bridge before the last corner, I think Socrates could have let a little bit more space. He was right in the middle of the circuit. Of course, it was on a straight, but still, that is something, you know, it at least makes you flinch a little bit. But yeah, qualifying's over, and now we're heading onto the grid with these 10 GTR GT3s.
Absolutely, you can see Windy at the front, Shalinu in second, Robert third, Rike fourth, Mark fifth, Relax in sixth, then it's Colin in seventh, and Kyle Zarb then in 8th place. They will take a rolling start here, ladies and gentlemen, automated by the Gran Turismo Sport system, and when the clock strikes 0, they're given full autonomy and are given themselves a chance to race. 20 lap starts now, and let's get ourselves going. Windy in command at the front of the field, Shalinu in second, Robert there in 3rd place as they make their way down the hill through Paddock Hill for the very first time, and looking all nice and clean throughout the majority. A little battle there back behind for Mr. Collin to deal with here as Kyle Zarb wants to try and find a way down the inside, and a little bit of contact there going on through. They get away with that. You can't afford to be too aggressive with contact, otherwise you may cop the slow down system, but Mr. Collin goes to Narnia, and well, bring Mr. Tumnus back with you as he goes back onto track, because that's 2 positions lost.
Yeah, not quite the optimal start for him, but one thing also worth noting very much. Oh, here we see Socrates as well, his little point of view from that situation, because he was, of course, the big benefactor from this. Mr. Collin just, yeah, missing his braking point there under a lot of pressure at the race start. And, yeah, Windy, he seems to be taking off already. But, yeah, what I noticed earlier, and what no doubt all the viewers from the weeks before have noticed...
Oh, hello.
Oh,
side by side behind for second and third. Robert, I think, has just got through on Shalinu and has done, but has run wide there. That's not ideal. Just about keeps it together in a straight line. Shalinu's got the inside for Jim Clark. Replay up on screen, and we've just missed the back end of how that one happened, but you can see here the back stepping out, the bridge slightly blocking it, but well saved. Roberts lost the place to Shalino, and now Rike down the inside at Paddock Hill Bend, one of the key places to get a move done. But just like that, the position is made. So Robert, from looking at second position, in about 2 corners, goes from second back to fourth.
Yeah, you win some, you lose some, and oh, that's another big sideways moment, not just from Robert, but also from Relax right behind him, and Shalino now as well. Everyone's very, very desperate to show the JDM routes of the skyline, but what can you say to that? You're certainly not going to be drifting those and be faster, as we now see Rike just pull alongside, looking for the outside for the next corner here, Hawthorns. And he makes it around the outside. That's a lot of courage there. And Shalino's right looking down his backside as Robert is also closing in once again. And that's certainly a lot more battling. Now Robert looking down the inside for Sheen Curve, looking over the inside grass just before the braking zone. And this 3-way train, which has potential to go into a 5-way train, certainly something to keep watching here.
Oh, absolutely. You can see right now, Rike, everything available has to be there. Robert almost giving the bump draft here down clearways to Sheen's Curve. And you can see right now, Zelinu nowhere to go, and it's blocking both lanes. Oh, contact between both of them. Robert there on the inside, trying everything to maintain the line. They lean on each other into Paddock Hill. Zelinu's going to go wide, and Robert's going to pick the place back up. But look at how much time it's costing them all at the moment, Nicholas. The gap now is up to 7.2 seconds.
Yes, and that is definitely the luxury of not having to battle with others. A luxury that all the 5 cars behind him don't have right now, but I think... Oh, that is a big moment, and he barely caught it once again, but that is just too much time that you lose. Mark was probably very thankful for that, because now he's right behind Relax in 5th place. And really, he has a bit of a gap now, 3/10, but look at that come down immediately. And Robert is no stranger to making moves on the Grand Prix circuit, as we saw just last lap.
Absolutely. Now just pick your line and open it up. Those tyres are going to start screaming out in agony a little bit, and it's the longer that these go on in terms of the stint, the more difficult it gets. A little half look to the inside, trying to get into the mirrors of Rike. Doesn't quite work for Robert at the moment. Shalinu back in 6th place, was able to save that actually, and Robert with another huge slide. Not going to be ideal in this 5-car scrap for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. Little bit of tyres on the grass on braking entry was never going to help Robert, and trying to catch the car who's going on through. Rike has just been so conservative on the tyres at the front, dictating where all of the flow, the natural flow of the traffic behind, has to go through. There's Jelinu trying to dive down the inside of Mark, and there's not much Mark can do. Has to sit back and say 6th place is mine for the time being as they drive on by. Del Sol out of the event, of course, from the early stages. But there goes, I believe, Relax Racing, who just about keeps it out of the tyres. And that's another case of power early, rear-wheel drive does not like early power throttle application.
Yes, and that is really the big challenge here. You have to be so sensitive with the throttle with these cars, simply because they just have such a humongous amount of power, and this twin-turbo V6 is not afraid to put all that power down. But in contrast, the rear tires, of course, they are struggling to put it all down on the road, as we now have the back here of Shalino's car, and now Mark is closing in here, looking through Westfield, down Dingledale, and he's not quite close to make a move right now. But of course, all the others here don't want him to make a move. That is, and that is a lot of time loss here by Robert, because I think he just braked on the outside grass again. Certainly, we see a lot of sideways action, so kind of in my head at the moment. Every time Robert just goes through any sort of corner, there once again with a lot of... that's too much. I was about to say, every time he goes past here, going into these corners with this sideways action, a bit of muffled Eurobeat in the distance, but that was certainly too much a muffled Eurobeat for him.
Absolutely, a massive sideways moment, and just like that, it all falls apart. All that battling means Windy is clear. 11 seconds down the road, and just like this, the race is pretty much falling into the lap at the moment. There is Rike in second position. All that battling from behind has given a massive gap to Mark in third place. So Celino has dropped back now into fifth behind Relaxo. There's been another little moment for Celino over the last lap that we didn't quite manage to see. So now that gap is starting to look pretty comfortable for Rike in second position overall. But this is the key to racing like this. They're just about starting to look towards that first window as Gianluigi here having a little bit of a battle for sixth place. Robert will be trying to get back, but the more that Robert slides and makes mistakes and spins and all of that, that's still going to do the tyres even more no good.
Yeah, most definitely, and I think we are starting to see this quite a lot here. He's wiggling everywhere. And at the same time, it has to be said, as he's now touching the grass and just lets Robert through, Gianluigi, he wasn't the fastest in qualifying, but yet, from 10th place, he went up to 7th already. So just keeping out of trouble and slowly moving up the field, it's certainly working out for him.
Consistency very key. There was Kyle Zarb in 8th place, and Rike at the moment just managing the gap, 2.2 seconds. Spinner, Celino are down at Paddock Hill Bend, so right down the bottom of the hill. We catch it on replay, then going on through. The rear tyres must be screaming out, especially, of course, those left-hand side tyres as well. Just gets on the gravel, and once you're there, there's not much saving you from that point. You get different levels of grip between rights and lefts, and all of a sudden, Celino and Robert and Gianluigi find themselves in a fight for fifth.
Yeah, he got himself into quite bad position there, just got caught out by the off-camber nature of Paddock Hill Bend, and Robert getting caught out by, the lack of front grip from his tires, I would say. But yeah, Celino, he had quite a moment there, of course, running wide there, and just on the dip, where all the load is getting put onto the car, just because, you have this perfect little dip. After you go downhill, you change to the uphill again, and the load coming in there, and just as he now again with a big moment, everyone's starting to look very nervous now, as we are further than 3 laps into the race. But yeah, Celino, having the entirety of the load of that heavy Nissan applied to his rear axle, while half of the car's in the gravel, of course it's going to send you around. You don't have proper grip there, and Mark, under all this trouble, moved up to 3rd place, so he's going to be laughing here.
Robert is the first to come down in at the end of lap 6, start of lap 7, so going on to what looks to be like another set of soft tyres at the moment, but we're waiting for confirmation. Worth noting that only half the tank ending up being used there from Robert, depending on whether he chose to start from full or not. Back out and racing again in 8th place, so keep that in mind as they go on through. Mark at the moment here in 3rd position has just lost about 0.4 of a second over the course of that last lap. Celino there in 5th place with Gianluigi in 6th. Will just be managing those tyres, trying to come in at the end of this lap. Now, with the fuel the way it is and the tyres the way it is, this is prime 2-stop territory here. Lap 7, maybe you can go to lap 8. Brave drivers may decide to go all the way to lap 10, because it seems like the fuel saving you can do is a lot more than what they could do at Spa.
Yes, it definitely seems that way, and as we have here a man who doesn't need to be doing any fuel saving right now. But yeah, what I noticed as Robert went into the pit lane, he still had 44% of his fuel tank left after these 6 laps, so I think you can almost maybe even do it with a bit of fuel saving. You can almost do it in one stop even, but I don't think that is going to be very a very good idea for anyone.
Issue for Relax then, going off the circuit at the Jim Clark curve, struggling to put the power down as the rears spin up and the torque goes through, and it's not once, it's not twice, it's thrice that it happens, trying to get something out of those tyres, and because they're pretty much running on carcasses at that moment, Relax finds himself in all sorts of trouble and now back into 6th place. So I think everyone's trying to just manage it as far as they can to try and get themselves to the one-stop window, but the big key here is that a lot of drivers in the mid-pack have been making mistakes, so much so that Gianluigi finds himself in 4th place.
slow and steady wins the race, said the tortoise, and certainly not calling Gianluigi the tortoise, but, you know, just staying out of trouble, going at his own pace, and just not making any mistakes seems to be working out for him very well right now. And in opposition to that, everyone else has been having quite a lot of trouble so far. Socrates now in the pits for his scheduled pit stop, and yeah, he's just gonna look into fighting for that 9th place at the moment, I think, as we have Windy here now already a lap ahead of 10th place. And yeah, what can you say but, you know, absolute consistency once again, the level of consistency and the level of pace that we're used from him already. And Rike looking in a solid 2nd place right now, also not really attackable right now because it's 3.7 seconds. Relax with his completely shredded tires now in the pit stop, looking to refuel his car up to 60% of the tank, and I think that he will definitely still be coming in for another stop for maybe a longer stint at the end.
Absolutely, and that's what we have been seeing here. So Mr. Colin also has come down in, made a stop, got back out again, but Windy in total command here at Brands Hatch. 17 seconds to the good at this moment in time, has not put a foot wrong in this race so far, and is just driving within the means where other drivers are just pushing the margins a bit too much out on circuit, and it's so easy just to get something wrong. Lap 9 will go on to lap 10, so this is clearly now the one-stop window that drivers will be looking for those who are staying out this long. A lot of drivers who are coming in around lap 8 will have maybe 4 laps to go on their stint, trying to save the tyres as much as possible, and that is an inherent skill when it comes to these sorts of racing, these sorts of races, I should say. How well can you save the tyres and make sure that you're not running too much angle through the corners, too much turn of the steering wheel, and just using up that rubber 9 times as much as what you would say in any other race?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge here, especially since these cars are so happy to oversteer under power. And I think Relax was one of the guys who found that out the very hard way with his little, well, almost spin there, but then constant burnouts because he just couldn't get any traction down. Tires completely dead, as we have Kyle here now for his pit stop. And he's refueling quite a lot. He stayed out for quite a lot as well, only 30% left. But yeah, Windy is still out there. I think he's actually really fuel saving now, and yeah, 125 still doing a lot better pace than most people out there, even with the tires already quite far down like this. And yeah, quite a lot of different strategies here. I think Windy might even be going for a one-stop strategy if it's looking like this, but he should be heading into the pits now. There we are. And very aggressive there, just kissing the grass patch on the inside there. 12% left, even though he's staying out so long. That is quite a bit of fuel saving.
Yep, it certainly is. And what was key about that is that for someone who says fuel saving like you do, Nicholas, the fact of the matter was more time taken. That's Socrates there in trouble on the left-hand side, but Rike down in onto the lane, and out and away goes Windy, so able to keep that going, but ultimately a few struggles then going on for certain people. So Rike in, Mark in, one-stop strategy may just be the best way forward. Zelinu is in on the medium compound. Now that's really interesting here. Zelinu has went on to the medium compound trying to get it to work, and ultimately that may not have played out into the best hands. Looking at where people have come out in comparison, for those who have gone earlier, those who have gone later, Relax has jumped pretty much absolutely everybody in that set of stops, going up to second place. But the key here is that everyone's now got fresh tyres, and Relax is on the older soft tyres and due to pit again, so they're all going to have to try and find a way by him.
Most definitely, they're now on a one-stop strategy, but at the same time, if they use too much fuel here, if they use too much tires here, their one-stop strategy is not going to work out, and I think Relax is definitely banking on that. He already did it for his first pit stop. He has to get into the pits for another time. All he can do right now is to try to keep fighting against Rike, Mark, and Shalinu, who are all right behind him. And if he can actually pull that off, I think that would be a strategy masterpiece from him.
Absolutely, but the big issue is how much time will be lost in the stop, and that's going to drop definitely behind Rike, definitely behind Mark, and probably definitely behind Zelino as well. So it should be a race, maybe with Gianluigi potentially, depending on how quick Relax can run around this place. You can see on the mini-map where everybody is in comparison, so that's what they will all be dealing with. But the good news here in terms of Relax Racing's race is the fact that effectively that last stop will be a splash and a dash.
Yes, most definitely. It's pretty much just a very easy way to just get it done with. Maybe this is also what he was just trying to bank for. Of course, like if he's going to be in this strategy now, he pitted a bit earlier, but I don't actually know if he maybe wants to go for the 2-stop because of the earlier stop, you know, to try and attack once again full blast. And that's Rike with the mistake, trying to catch Relax. That's what he's banking for, so this is definitely going to help out Relax. That's just, well, look how quickly the gap is building up there. And Mark, of course, is starting to catch quite a bit as well.
Certainly is, and that's going to be a little concerning. Mark was very, very consistent over the course of the stint and put a lot of pressure on Rike early on, so that's worth keeping in mind. But Relax did only take 60% of the fuel tank, so very much angling towards 2 stops. Very much will have to take a bit of fuel towards the end of this, but ultimately he's keeping pace with those behind. Robert at the moment in 9th position, struggled very much with the tyre situation, and now is about to fall a lap down to Windy here, in control by nearly 25 seconds here in this race. It's 24 seconds overall down the inside, no real worries, traffic getting out of the way. Windy is effectively a country mile away from everybody else, and for those who don't know how long a country mile was in terms of a mile, a country mile was effectively 8 regular miles.
That's quite a lot of distance. But yeah, we have him definitely quite a bit ahead, 24 seconds now. Well, just a detriment to his absolute consistency once again, and well, when nothing is going wrong, when all the back markers are getting out of the way, I don't see that, you know, changing anywhere or any time soon. At the same time, we have Celino here, who's starting to catch up to Mark a little bit. Of course, it's still 9.6 seconds to catch up, and now also growing a bit again because he had a bit of a bad exit out of 30s. But we know Celino, he's always on the edge. He's going to be looking to get back into that top 3. Definitely not happy with the mistakes he made earlier, and at the same time, we see a man who has made no mistakes at all, who was a bit down on pace, but just kept going and going and going and moving up the ranks.
Just like that, it's as easy as that when it comes to racing. If you don't make any mistakes and your rivals do, well, who's the one that profits? It's yourself. And a lot of drivers look at racing, and a lot of fans look at racing saying that, you know, it's so easy, you know, all you got to do is drive it on the road and keep it going. But there's so many factors that go into making mistakes. For example, Rike right now is looking at trying to get by a car in front. There'll be slight turbulences in the air, which will be making life very tough. Try and get by and get close drivers in front. There's the lap traffic factor of Robert, which is never going to be very useful either to try and negotiate a way by. But this is the key here. With 7 laps to go, well, 6.5 now for these drivers, and it will be 6 laps to go very, very swiftly for your race leader heading through the the Sterling's corner, right now. But Rike here has just got to stay calm right now, knowing that Relax has to pit once more. Only has to manage that 1.8 second gap to Mark behind in terms of a fight for 2nd and 3rd place.
Yeah, Rike seems to be in a quite comfortable position at the moment. He knows that he can go a bit faster than Mark at the moment, and at the same time Mark has to try and keep up with him and also keep up the gap to Celino behind. So Mark is definitely under more pressure right now than Rike, especially considering that there's still Robert as the back marker between them. So if you have a car between yourself and the car following you, of course it's going to give you a bit more confidence. And Relax now in, couldn't keep going any longer, has to pit in for fuel and for tires. Let's see where he's coming out. He has to fuel enough for 6 laps, and he's going to get jumped by Celino. Is he going to get jumped by Gianluigi as well? I think not. No, that is definitely not happening anytime soon, darling. But, you know, definitely still something good coming out of that, because I think he started a bit further back, and that's Mark under a lot of pressure there.
That is Mark trying to push, gets a little bit out of shape, and then it turned into majorly out of shape, and it looked like a stress ball when you scrunch it up so much. That was the issue Mark had. Socrates retires the car and is out of the event then from 10th position, so we do have a retirement then alongside Del Sol, who didn't make it out of qualifying, but that gives Rike the gap. And oh, hello, that is Robert trying to get back through in terms of being traffic, feeling like he's a lot quicker than Rike, and I think that may be due to the fact that he's pitted onto a two-stop strategy trying to get that done. So you can see right behind, heading to Westfield Bend. Now, you are allowed to unlap yourself. It's a little bit cheeky to do so, but that was a little look down the inside there, and I think Rike just ran that wide, and that was almost a case of open season, open opportunity.
Yeah, pretty much. Robert just giving Rike a bit of a reminder of, hey, remember what happened in lap 1? Yeah, so do I. Looking down the inside, and I think there was a little bit of a shock for Rike there. Just missing his turning point a little bit, and that's certainly a surprise in such a high-speed corner as Westfield, when you've suddenly got a car on your inside and you just don't know where it came from.
Absolutely, and that makes life so difficult when you have to try and battle with cars that you're technically not racing against, so to speak. There is Windy out in front, 24.8 seconds, now 25 seconds here over Rike. Has dialed it down a little bit, it seems, in terms of lap time and pace, not really pulling away at the same rate of knots as previously, and that rate of knots right now is at over a second a lap compared to rivals. Being 25 seconds clear in any race is mightily impressive, and this is just a case of just bringing it all back home, knowing that there's 4 laps to go in Windy's race, and there's not much really to look at and say it's not doing too well. There's Rike in second position, knowing that for everything that's happened, it's going to have to take something pretty monumental. You'll need one of those magic boxes that one legendary driver, Peter Brock, had in the car, to hope that some ionizing wave or something like that is going to change the course of history and give Rike the win.
Yeah, I think it's a bit unlikely now for Rike to win, but either way, second place is nothing to be ashamed of here, especially with considering how much action we had in this entire race. But of course, it's not over yet. A bit slow out of the chicane, maybe? No, it's just a bit of a timing bug, I think. Now to almost 2.5, yeah, over 2.5 seconds now. Rike is putting on the pressure on Mark, and at the same time, Shalinu, only 3 or 4 laps left, and that's a big lock-up, or not even a lock-up, but missed break from Mark. And that, of course, gives Shalinu a bit more hope here. He sees the gap going down. It's now almost under 7 seconds here. And to catch up 7 seconds in 3 or maybe 4, well, a bit more than 3 laps, quite a big number to do.
Absolutely, and it will be a second a lap as well for Relaxed, who's 4.2 seconds back on fresh tyres compared to the mediums that Shalinu is trying to run at the moment. So this is a desperate chase from Relaxed here to get down now to 3.9 seconds. That's 3/10 in one corner alone, and this is where you're starting to see how Relaxed trying to attack this one and get on through. That Nissan there looking very, very similar to Kozo Hoshino's car from Initial D, but now trying to push, now trying to attack. 3.4 seconds in the time that we've been talking. Almost an entire second has been lopped off, and on that last lap, this could be a case of overtakes could very well happen. It comes down to a case of putting consistency in and hoping that the rear tyres just do not snap away.
Yeah, but at the moment it seems that Relax has the greatest force of them all with him, the force of new tires. And I think if he can keep up this pace, he might very well be fighting Shalinu at the very end here. And Mark, at the meantime, he's starting to lose a bit more time, just slipping away a bit further. maybe he overpushed his tires a little bit because those rears just don't look stable at all right now. Enrique, I think he's quite happy with that right now. He's just going to try and drive it to the end unimpeded and just bring this race to an end for himself in a nice and comfy P2.
No point trying to elevate the risk in this race for Rike right now. 31 seconds behind your race leader, Windy, who's starting the penultimate lap of his race at the moment and absolutely walking on sunshine, some would say, at this stage in time in the bright yellow Pennzoil car, Pennzoil Nissan right now heading through the Surtees corner and up the hill, trying to lap 7th place Kyle Zarb pretty quickly at this stage. The blue flag order being given right now, and on the brakes just allows Windy to lisk to the inside and pick that one up. Gets a little bit of grass on the exit, but that's okay for the moment here, Nicholas. But this has been a world-class drive from Windy.
Absolutely. Just the absolute pace from him has been very impressive. And once again, of course, his consistency as well. Very rare mistakes from him. And in the background, you see Carl just getting a bit wild there. But yeah, Windy with almost half a lap advantage. And yeah, just let that sink in. That is almost 2 kilometers of distance between him and the next car, as we now go back to Shalinu here. And that is not what Relax needs whatsoever. Definitely not, but he still has, you know, just over a lap. But once again, he has made that mistake through numerous corners now. Just gets a bit too aggressive. He gets a bit too giddy on the throttle. Just wants to get it done with, and yeah, this impatience is maybe his downfall for this race result here. As we also have Mark catching up to Rike again, though.
We certainly do, and we're heading on to the final lap of this event. Rike here, 2 seconds the margin, just driving well within the means, it seems, at this point in time. That gap starting to stretch out, 35 seconds to the front, and Relax there. We were talking about the rear tyres starting to go away late in the stint, and it just so happened that they went at the wrong time. Windy, a little bit of grass there, heading through now into the Westfield Bend, and just starting to attack a bit too much there. We were just cut away at the wrong point, I think. Windy had maybe a little bit of a moment there. There's Shalinu in 4th, but Windy all right at the moment, still 36.5 seconds, was able to gather the car back up. It has been a sensational race in terms of pace. They battled with each other behind in lap 1, and from that point, you'll never see him again. Windy's going to come to the line, and it's a cakewalk here in Brands Hatch. It is leagues away to find anybody else as Windy wins the event here and takes the Nissan Challenge. It will be Rike who will be coming to the line for 2nd position overall. Mark unable to close then in the final stage of this. They've got a minute to get themselves over the line before the session says you are exactly where you finish out there on track, and Rike here will come to the line and take that 2nd place with Mark in 3rd as we see them go through the right-hand bend of the Jim Clark curve. Legendary 2-time Formula 1 world champion, taken well before his time at the Hockenheim ring. But there's 2nd, there's 3rd, and then of course you've got Shalinu and Relaxed as well, having their good runs. Windy, your race winner. Shalinu comes across the line in 4th, Relaxed 5th, and it will be Gianluigi who will come home with 6th position overall. But Windy, your winner here today from Rike, Mark, Shalinu, Relaxed, Gianluigi, Mr. Colin, and Kyle Zarb, with 2 more vehicles then trying to get themselves home to the line come the end, ladies and gentlemen. And, well, you can't really argue about the result here today. The challenge was head and shoulders crystal clear. You will not find an easier declarable winner here, Nicholas. That was Windy's from moment 1.
Yes, absolutely untouchable. But yeah, what else can you say? We're used to seeing good performances from him, and in this field today, he was just in a league of his own. We saw other people catching their 2nd wind, but his wind was far too windy for all of them else. So yeah, quite impressive drive from him. Almost no mistakes except for that last lap where the camera just cut out. But even then, 36 seconds, that is quite impressive. Almost half a lap ahead of the next person. So congratulations to him. But at the same time, behind Rike, the first man, from that huge 5-guy group that we saw at the start of the race, we saw so many people with such aggressive driving styles just fighting for that position, not backing off, overtaking in the most unlikely of places. And he was the one to survive all that chaos and, of course, make it home in second place. So congratulations to him as well.
Absolutely, and it's all about survival come the end. But there's so much more that's going to be going on in terms of the next 2 weeks. You've got to remember that we're going towards Lamborghinis on a Wednesday, and we'll be going towards Monza with that sort of battling, and then over to the Red Bull Ring for the Formula Casual Wednesday Challenge here, and that's going to be something worth keeping in mind on TVM Sports, on Motorsport TV, on ESTV, on World Pro Racing's YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Twitch as well. If you haven't already, go give everybody that you can a like, a share, and subscribe. Of course, there's Twitter handles down here under our names. We wouldn't mind if you showed your love and support either as well. But a massive thanks has to go to everyone who gets it done in terms of this event. And of course, you've got to talk about the stewarding today. We haven't had an opportunity to talk too much about that one overall. Of course, I myself, Jake Sperry, Nicholas Hillebrand has been alongside me. Justin and Nathan Mifsud have been on the broadcast cameras here trying to piece everything together. Adrian Fagayo has been the chief race director. And of course, George Muscat has been the chief race steward on top of this. From everybody here at World Pro Racing, we thank you for joining us on wherever you have been watching. And it has been Windy's paradise once again, 36 seconds clear of anybody else. There is no doubt that the Nissan is his domain, but when you get to what is a raging bull, when you get to the likes of a Lamborghini, you know that things get a little bit crazier. Sometimes you need a maverick to try and tame what cannot be normally tamed. And in 1 week's time, we'll find the one person who can tame a Lamborghini. We'll see you in 1 week's time. This event is brought to you by World Pro Racing, the Malta Motorsport Federation, Game Breaker Malta, GMR Entertainment, WJ England and Son, Melita, Media Looks, Restream.io, Gaming Malta, VisitMalta.com, and TVM Sport.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
This is so dangerous. You are risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.